Melissa works as a researcher with the Anishinabe team. At a conference in October 2014, she gave an overview of the beginnings of the Listening to One Another program. It takes many years and several community partners to adapt an evidence-based program to local needs and to enhance it with cultural components such as Indigenous protocols, stories, and values.
Well, good afternoon, Buju everyone. Thank you for coming. My name is Melissa Walls, and I am Voice Court Teaching First Nation in Anishinabe. So I was born in the U.S., right on the Canadian border in International Falls. But my grandmother grew up in Couchiching, and my great-grandmother was from Rainy River. So I feel like I'm home in a lot of ways. And I'm going to very briefly just give you an overview of the project today. The journey of the Listening to One Another project begins in 1996 for our team. And in 1996, a professor in the States named Les Whitbeck, who many of us have worked with, partnered with several reservation communities in the United States to do an adaptation of this existing family-based program, and it's called Strengthening Families. And that program had originally been created to reduce drug and alcohol use, basically in European kids in the United States. And Les, at that time, was working with a man named Gary Adams, who happens to be my uncle. And I have to give him credit, as our conference theme is about our elders, and he's the person who got me involved in the project. And so that team put together an adaptation of Strengthening Families and implemented it across several reservations in the States. So we're going to call that first generation listening to one another, okay? Fast forward to about 2001, and the team decided that they would adapt the program further and test it with younger kids, because what they had found was the program was pretty useful for preventing substance use, but not really great at stopping kids from using. And so generation 2 of Listening to One Another was born. And in that implementation of the program, I was actually a graduate student with the team, and we culturally adapted Strengthening Families even further for Anishinaabe communities and based on core Anishinaabe values. And so after that iteration of the program, it was about 2005 when some of our First Nations community partners, and I won't name them unless they want to come forward, some of them may or may not be in the room, came to one of our meetings and was talking to Les and our team about the issue of youth suicide that we know is a problem in many of our communities. And we were trying to brainstorm about how can we think of a program or address this issue of suicide. Come on in. And we thought of Bazindarira, which is listening to one another. And we thought, can we adapt this further to promote mental health and not just reduce substance use? And so we fiddled around trying to get funding, and this arbitrary border between the United States and Canada really stopped us along the way. And so we partnered then eventually with a man named Lawrence Kermeyer, who is here in Canada at McGill University. And Lawrence is the principal investigator on this project that brings together all of the communities that you see on this map. And now we bring to you today the third generation of Listening to One Another. So Listening to One Another, as I mentioned, is an adaptation of this evidence-based, family-centered program. And our version of the program has 14 weekly sessions. And at these sessions, and you'll hear about these tonight, or this afternoon, what day is it? Families get together and do structured discussions, activities, hear lessons, hear from elders, etc., on various topics. And the core of those topics are the core constructs that we try to use across all of the communities. Now, the big message that I want to share with you as the researcher, I'm actually here as the researcher, one of the researchers on the project, is that we struggle as researchers to figure out how do we implement programming when we have limited resources, right? I mean, you live this all the time. How do we create programs that we know are sustainable and that we know may have an impact on families with very little money? And so this is really a grand pilot test. How do we take this program that was designed for European Americans, adapted for Anishinaabe communities, and implement it in 5 very diverse First Nations cultures? Sounds simple, not really. And so the project is funded by the Public Health Agency of Canada. we've been working together. We were just debating how many years it's been, but it's been at least 4, I think. And since 1996 with the Anishinaabe communities.